Well, welcome. The beginning of the silly season is upon us. And if you don't know what that means, you can ask Kevin Rudden, because he's the one that found out it was not a slur, but it was actually a tribute from ancient times. The election season is upon us. As always, we'll endeavor to introduce all the candidates that are willing to help our kids and our citizens, our residents of Milford. As always, I'll never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, but I'll beg you to become educated and pick a candidate that represents you and your values. And then please get out. Come the beginning of April, the weather will be nice. Get out and vote, because there's nothing more important. You know, we talk about our kids. You know, tonight we're going to talk about school committee. Well, I remember when my children hit that junior, senior year of high school, I got lucky to get 1 or 2 hours a day with them. The people that are on the school committee are dictating the policies of how your children spend 6 to 8 hours a day. I can't think of anything more important. And I can't think of anything I'd like to say thank you more to than the people who step up and don't just complain about how things could be better, but actually want to make them better. So let's start with an introduction.
Hi, I'm Brendan Rickert. I'm running for school committee. I'm currently a town committee meeting member. And how I kind of got into this debacle here. So I come from a family of public servants. My grandmother served in my hometown's town hall for 35 years. My father was in the fire department services for over 40 years. My mother was a paraprofessional in the schools for 17 years. My oldest brother ran for his local town committee in his town. My middle brother is a principal at a middle school in his town. So naturally, we just have an affinity for being involved in the community. And I personally feel like how you feel, where voting is probably our most important civil duty that we could possibly have. And you know, it's nothing to say negatively about other portions of serving in your government, but voting is by far the most important thing. I'm 31 years old and I've never missed an election. I went off to college before I was 18. I filled out the paperwork to register to vote before I went to college. I actually filled out an absentee ballot application before I went to college, so that way I could vote in the first election that I could that was 5 days after my 18th birthday without having to come back to town. So voting to me is incredibly important, and in community involvement, there's nothing more rewarding.
I'll start with the same question I'll end the show with. Brendan, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm pretty new to Milford. I've been here for a little less than 2 years, so I have a lot to learn for sure. And a lot of people have to get to know me. But why you should vote for me is, well, I think of it as pretty simple. Our young people are going to have to change jobs frequently when they get older. It's just a way of life how it is. It's no longer you stay in 1 or 2 companies for your life. Technology is advancing day by day at this point. It's that rapid. And we need to figure out creative ways to educate our students from whether they enroll pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, whatever it might be, all the way until they graduate, and make sure they have all the skills they need to handle all the changes in their lives. And I believe, as someone who is currently going through changes day by day, and just what I've experienced and what I think that is going to be happening, I feel like I have a lot of energy and passion to achieve those goals to be met.
If you look at the Milford school system, and you were made king with the magic wand, and you could change 3 things, what would they be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've thought about how I view education in general. And I think there's actually 4 areas that need to be addressed, and not necessarily changes, but important areas that we need to cover. First and foremost is safety, and that's both internal and external threats. There's a lot within that conversation, and I think the schools already do a fantastic job with it, and we can keep on doing better. We can keep on reforming how we handle bullying, both in and outside of school. We can continue to make our schools safer by building designs and security systems. So I think that's first and foremost. If you can't feel safe in your environment, you can't learn. And if you can't learn, no matter how much money we put into the schools, you're just never going to have the success.
Have you looked at the recent actions of adding a Milford SWAT team?
I haven't. I don't know about that enough to talk about it in an intelligent manner. I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea just off the first time I've heard of this. But do you have something specific about it that you had a question?
No, it's just there was a lot of discussion
Mm-hmm.
because it was $600,000 the first year.
It's a lot of money.
I remember when the proposal was read to us, Chris Moore and our chairman of the FinCom and I were looking at each other. And when they said that the average incident is over in less than 18 minutes, and we're part of a regional SWAT group.
Yep.
And they're pretty proud that in 32 minutes they can have a SWAT team in Milford.
But that's about 14 minutes too late.
And that was the point. I remember looking at Chris saying, if anything ever happened and we voted against this, how could we look ourselves in the mirror?
You're essentially, culpable for it. And that's not necessarily, it's not to blame anyone. I think it has some merit. I do believe community resources, when you're involving multiple communities at the same time, is ultimately beneficial. It lowers the individual taxpayer costs substantially, but to your point, if the average incident's over in 18 minutes, it's something that we need to address. So I think with this new incoming police chief that we're going to have soon, it's certainly something to bring back up with him or her and see what we can do to maybe bridge that response time, and if they have all the tools necessary to have a faster intervention without a full tactical
Well, that
SWAT
was the
team.
idea of the SWAT, where we hired 4 highly trained, highly armed,
Yep,
officers to be in all our schools.
sure.
And the idea was, should something happen, within 2 to 3 minutes,
It would.
they're in their cruiser and they're our schools are a mile apart.
Yeah, they're not far.
So, if you're the guy in Memorial or the gal in Stacy,
Sure.
and something happens at the high school, within minutes you're there.
Yeah.
More importantly, in my mind, they spend the time learning the school.
Mm-hmm.
So all the nooks and crannies that you read how some of these animals, I shouldn't call them animals, but
Of course.
anybody
of
who
course.
would hurt a child,
Sure. Yeah.
you can see where my sympathy lies, not with them.
Of course.
But they hide in places.
Mm-hmm.
And if the police already know the school like the back of their hand,
Mm-hmm.
the odds are a lot less that they can hide where they can't be found.
Yeah, I would agree. Being the son of a firefighter, I know where every exit is. And the instant I walk into a place, good or bad, it's just a natural habit that I have personally adapted to because of my father. So I think there's some things within our education system that we can teach our students as to how to better educate themselves of their surroundings. And that's a good case in point. And certainly for officers to know our schools and community, it's invaluable.
So number 1 is safety.
Yeah.
You're waving the magic wand for number 2.
I think vision. Like to my previous point, there's so much change in our world, and it's rapid. It's going to become more global, and we need to educate our students in a way that's going to be able to prepare them to be as effective and successful as possible. So having a long-term vision, and I know we have a couple things out there already within the school committee. I know there's a few school committee members that have pushed for things like that, and that's great. And I think we need to keep on adapting that. And I think we should actually get very specific to different areas of the workforce, whether it's going to be in the technology sector, manufacturing sector, things of that nature. We should probably get a little bit more specific too. My third point, I think you need to have access. And this town does a fantastic job of access. I think it's amazing, the program that we have where every student gets a laptop or a tablet that they can bring home. But that is great as long as they have the resources at home to be able to use their tablet or laptop. And then don't get me wrong, there's so many great resources in town. I think the community center, the youth community center, is fantastic. What a great resource for our students. The library is great too. But I think there's something to be said for maybe even free public Wi-Fi that's available just right in your home in certain sections of town to allow for families who may not have the resources they need to have that internet access. At some point, in almost everyone's job in this world, you're going to have to use the internet effectively. So having that access at home is critical. So the last thing I want to see is a child's education to be potentially dampened because they don't have the resources at home just because of their financial situation. And then fourth, community. So kind of back to your original point of voting, we could do a better job of voting in this town. We're about average for towns our size, and in the state,
We're embarrassing. I'm sorry. I love this town more than anything, but when you're averaging 12 to 13% turnout,
it's not great.
I mean, it's fine to say we're about as good or as bad as everybody else, but dang it, this is Milford.
Yeah, we should
This
be better.
is the center of our universe.
I want to be the best. Yeah, I agree. So, I'm willing to work with anyone that wants to get even one more voter out than I would. I know there's some laws at the state level that kind of restrict with some of the more creative ideas that we could do. I'd be happy to work with Senator Fatman or Representative Murray on those types of issues. But community is more than that. So I just read the other day that Milford High School has a higher rate than most other schools of athletes going D1, D2, or D3. Awesome. And as a former athlete myself, when I wore my town's name or my school's name, there's a pride to that. And that travels everywhere you go. And that should be for everyone in this town. We should have that sense of community that we're proud and that we want to be the best, not just in our little portion of the world here, but across the whole U.S.
The thing that I love the most is we have a new athletic director.
He's great.
And when Pete came on the show the first time, he made it a point to say he believes in student athletes.
Sure.
Not athletes who pretend to be students.
I agree.
And, it really hit home because less than 0.1% of the kids that we have, I think about, okay, I have 4,200 kids well, now it's 4,500.
Yep.
But, you take and you say, less than 4 of them are going to make it in the pros.
Yeah.
So
not great odds.
No. If you're not being prepared to go to college,
sure,
or get a craft, a trade, you're not going to make it. No,
absolutely not. But I think there's so many values to learn from sports. So I did cross country and track all 4 years of high school and college. And that opened up my world to so many more opportunities. I had a small athletic scholarship, but that scholarship extended into my first year of grad school of the first master's degree that I got. And I don't know if I ever would have gone to grad school if I didn't have a little extra incentive, financially to do it. But it shaped my whole entire life by being involved in athletics. So,
So where did you go to school?
Yeah, I went to Sacred Heart University in Connecticut.
We don't like them.
Why don't you like them?
Because they beat Holy Cross in hockey.
I'm sorry. You'll have to see this. Sacred Heart, they just announced they're building a $60 million hockey rink.
Oh, Jimmy.
On campus. So they might be putting a little bit more money.
Those red uniforms, no.
I agree. I think they should lean a little bit more towards the gray and silver.
No, but good school.
Yeah.
Good school, good kids.
Yeah, and I actually had the privilege of teaching there. So I taught for almost 5 years in the exercise science department at Sacred Heart. So I know the value of a good education, and all along the way, I've just learned how important it is just being open to learning. I wound up getting all 3 of my degrees there. I have 2 master's degrees. I have an MBA and a master's of exercise science and nutrition. And it's just opened up my whole life. And that's why, I also coached at Fairfield University, so right next door to Sacred Heart. And I pushed my athletes. They hated me for it, but if they didn't have a 3.0 or better, they were doing 8 hours of study hall a week. Because I told them, there's going to be a point in your life where you're going to get a job. you probably have no desire to go for another degree, but they might want you to. And the last thing you want to say to your employer is, well, I can't get into grad school because I don't have a high enough GPA.
Right.
So I agree with Pete that, student athlete is important.
One of the things I'm most proud of, the Patriot League, Holy Cross, they're not going to go up against the Penn States.
No.
But
They compete hard.
95% of the athletes graduate
Yes.
with a real degree.
Yes,
I'm proud of them.
of course.
You know, I mean, we inherited a son who played basketball. Of course, he's still complaining that he's only making 95 grand. I'm like, excuse me, Chris,
Pretty good, buddy.
3 years out of school,
Yeah.
right? Or another one that's only making 86. I said, you guys, you're making money more
Yeah.
than 85% of the country.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't understand it.
When you're
'cause-
only 27 years old or 25 years old. Yeah.
Exactly. They're out of school 3-4 years.
Yep.
You shake your head and you're like,
That's good money.
that's great money.
Yeah. And put away some of your 401k, you're going to be very happy in about 40
But
years.
that, to me, is more important
Yeah.
than you got an extra touchdown or you threw an extra strike.
Sure.
Because, again, when you look at 0.1% might have a shot at making a living at a sport.
Right.
Okay, the other 99 point something percent have to make it like the rest of us.
Right.
So, my hat is off to Pete and his whole idea.
Yep.
And he's brought out a couple times that he's banged into the kid's head that when you're wearing that Milford jersey, yes, you're representing yourself,
Yep.
you're representing your family, but you're representing 28,000 other people.
Yeah. So true.
So, when you look at that, I like that they do that. I like that our superintendent goes to traditional basketball, baseball, and to the band,
Yeah.
and to other events.
That's what you have to do. I mean, that really shows that you're committed to student development. It doesn't matter if you're the star quarterback or, if you're the third seat flute. It doesn't matter. You have to be supportive of every single student in the school system.
So now we start looking at Milford and its test results.
Yeah.
We get beat up all the time.
We get beat up, but we're not far off. We're improving, so we get the grade that we're improving, but we're also not far off from the state average. Personally, I like to be better than the state average, and we need to get there. So it's one of those, hey, we're not totally, terrible here, but we do need to get better. And again, it goes back to the world's changing rapidly, and we need to prepare our students for that. And unfortunately, I'm a terrible standardized test taker. My SATs are terrible, all those fun things. But what worked for me personally and how I improved my scores and just overall improved test taking was practice. And there's a lot of things that you have to do to be better. And I'm of the mindset of 1 + 1 = 2. So if I want to get better at taking tests, well, I got to practice taking tests. And I think that's some of the things that we need to address from the school committee and work with our teachers to understand what we can give them resource-wise to improve upon those
Well, there's
scores.
a reason that if you're on a basketball team, the coach makes you shoot 500 free throws.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, as you say, practice.
Yep.
Practice.
1 + 1 = 2.
Now, any opinion on why Milford's scores are where they are?
I think there are some definite factors that are against us. We have a high population of students who English is their second language, and the tests are in English. It puts them at a disadvantage right off the bat. It's not to say that they're not intelligent, but if their lessons are all in English and their tests are all in English, but their home life, it may not be reinforced because maybe their parents don't know it or they want to keep with their tradition, that becomes very challenging for the student to learn, especially at a young age. So, I think we need to look at that from a perspective and say, all right, well, how can we improve on that? Then the other thing Milford has quite a diversity of incomes, and we do know that income level is directly correlated with how well you do on standardized on testing. If you are someone who has excess money and you see your child struggling, you're going to pay for private tutoring, and that private tutor is going to help you get better at taking those tests. So I think there is some of that there, that these tests are, just a little bit more biased towards someone who has a little bit more individual wealth.
Well, when you look at Milford today, we're at what, 43 or 45% reduced or free lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, that means that half the people
Yeah.
sending kids to school are living on 30 grand or less.
Right.
That's got to be tough.
It's impossible really to raise kids at that, with that low of an income. And that's a whole nother topic for a job that I am not running for. But yeah, I mean, it's a true disadvantage that we need to address. We need to give more resources. One of the things that I would like to propose is involving more community members to have essentially free office hours. There's a great program, it's national, it's called SCORE, and there's an office right here in Milford, and it's retired business professionals who help people try to start a business. Well, why don't we have that for our students? Like a mentorship program, maybe on Saturdays, you volunteer a couple hours and you get to help some kids.
It's interesting because an old teacher of mine, a fellow named Tony Chinapi, is working with Josh Otland, principal of the high school, and they're putting together a program called Connections, where you sign up to mentor a child for 4 years.
Yeah.
And they're targeting specifically first-generation kids who do well in school, but as you say, don't necessarily have the infrastructure. And I've said it, I mean, my father came to this country, and in my mind, he's one of the most educated, uneducated people.
Yeah.
He had 4 years of school, because that's what you got in the village in Portugal.
Right.
He came here, and it was all about school.
Yeah.
He had no idea what was going on at the school, but he was told that if he wants to support his son, he should show up for these events. I don't think he ever knew how big of an impact it had. Because my dad would put on his little hat, put on his suit, his one suit, go down to the school and sit there for an hour or two.
Sure.
Have no idea what was going on. But he knew that he was supposed to be there to support his son.
That's all you can ask for.
And you turn around, and I was one of those kids who walked out of the house and said, what are these people talking? Don't they all speak Portuguese?
Right.
Well, what's this English stuff?
Yeah.
I never spoke English, never needed it. So you start looking at some of the programs, like, God bless Tony in helping.
Yeah.
Because he's setting up these kids. They're smart kids. They're honor roll, high honor roll. They're driven kids.
Absolutely.
But their parents, a lot of them are like my father, my mother, who will do anything for their kids.
Absolutely.
But have no idea.
Right.
So the idea is, okay, take somebody who's gone through college, who's worked through the system,
Sure.
and help these kids. So, I see programs come up on their own because town doesn't pay for it.
No. And, that the saying that it takes a village to raise someone, it's true. And at some point, the town can't absorb every single cost. It's just not possible. So, more volunteerism. I know Robert Kraft, preaches that with the Patriots. If you're a Patriots fan, you should probably support that kind of a concept here, and really help out your community, because the biggest impact you can have is local community events. And if you can do it, even an hour a month would go a long way.
Now, we used to have a teacher a little bit before your time, Tommy Davern, at the 8th grade. And if you talk to Tommy, the 8th grade was his world. He had his building, and he made sure, because the first day we walked in, he said, every child here will have the opportunity to have a good education.
It's awesome.
Understand, if your child gets in the way of somebody else, I'm not going to tolerate it. I will take action.
Sure.
And he did. Well, when the 8th grade MCAS scores came out, I asked him, and I was on the parent-teacher council, and I said, Tommy, why do your scores suck? I knew I was going to get a reaction. I mean, I might as well have said, you know, your daughter's ugly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
This is his.
It's his baby.
It's his baby.
Yeah.
He took pride
Sure.
in those 8th graders like you could never believe. And I remember him looking at me saying, because you're ignorant. I said, great, educate me. And he showed me how in Milford we have a bimodal distribution.
Okay.
It's not a Gaussian curve. It's 2 Gaussian curves.
Interesting.
And he said, look, I will put my top kids against any town around us,
Sure.
and we won't be short.
Right.
But when you take kids who are learning the language, who maybe have 2 years, 3 years of school instead of 8,
Yep.
you can't expect them to come out at the same level.
Yeah.
And that really hit me because that kind of challenge, I immediately went and checked, and he was right.
Sure.
If you took the first Gaussian curve,
Sure.
we would stack up against anybody anywhere,
Right.
and we'd feel proud or prouder.
Sure.
So, you know, when I see that, we have to take into consideration
I agree.
how well we're doing.
I think we do a great job. You know, it frustrates me when I hear people say, you know, oh, you know, Hopkinton schools are so great, but then ignore us. Hopkinton does have great schools, no question about that. But I think we have a fantastic school system. I grew up in a town that's very similar to Milford. I had 54 different languages spoken at my high school. 54. I didn't know there was 54 different languages in the first place. So we had those struggles of, you know, of people who didn't understand the language, who were coming from less means, and people all the way, you know, up to multimillionaires. So, you know, I understand what it's like to be in a diverse district. And what I do know that is that it taught me a lot about the world at a very young age, just because I had to understand different backgrounds. Like, not everyone was like my family. You know, I also had parents who traveled to every single one of my track meets, especially in college, which was all over the place. So I think they missed 2 meets over my 4.5 years of running in college.
You know, it's
unreal.
amazing because what you just said is so profound. My youngest, my ungrateful offspring number 2, has told me that she was traumatized as a child because she remembers that I missed 1 dance and 1 field trip. Now, I thought I was doing pretty good.
Yeah, well, you missed 2 things. So.
But, you know, but she always kids me how I was traumatized.
Yeah.
You missed a dance. I said, most parents don't make those odds,
yeah.
you know? But it shows you these kids notice.
They do. Yeah, and it's tough because there are so many people, unfortunately, that have to work multiple jobs, or they have both parents working long-hour jobs along those lines, and that traditional home life that, you know, is like the picture-perfect American lifestyle that you would think of isn't always true for most families. So, you know, there's got to be some more creative ways overall, and this is definitely beyond the purview of the school committee, to get more family involvement, but it's something that we should absolutely value whenever we see it. You know, parents at sporting events, at concerts, any event that the child does is super important and lasting for the child's life.
Now, I'm going to be mean, but this is Milford. People in Milford like to know the personal side.
Sure.
So tell us about you and your wife. And
Yeah, so my wife...
I know it's intrusive, but...
No, not intrusive at all. Yeah, so my wife, you know, she's absolutely the better half, married up. She's a doctor of physical therapy. She works at Platinum Physical Therapy in Hopkinton. She's incredibly smart, incredibly driven, and you know, I just love her passion for everything that she puts her mind to. And she appreciates mine. She has no problem with me, you know, being out late campaigning or whatever activities that I have. So we're a great support structure for each other. We've been married for almost 3 years now.
Newlyweds.
Exactly. We have almost a 1-year-old dog. He's a golden doodle named Mozzarella. He's a fantastic little guy. So I work from home, so him and I, we just, every morning we have our long commute from the bedroom to the living room, and he does as much paperwork as he can, but usually he is pretty quiet. But yeah, we have a nice little house right by the high school. We love it. We love it here. We chose Milford for a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that really struck out to us was just how many resources the town has. We're both runners. Julianne was a much better sprinter than I was a distance runner. She's now converted to distance running just because it's a little bit hard to be a sprinter post-collegiately. But we love the bike path. It's a great resource. The parks are great. We would like to see a dog park pretty soon, so hopefully we can get on that. But
That's a new one. We haven't.
Yeah, dog park would be nice. Mozzarella needs to play.
I remember when we first had the discussions about the bike trail.
Yeah.
Or now the trail.
The trail.
Back then it was the bike trail, and when Reno DeLuzio first came, we all looked like, seriously? And okay, he had enough passion that we said we got to support. I mean, as a town, we got to support a little bit.
Yeah, about 5 miles worth.
And then it just kept growing and growing. And now, bar none, I think the trail is one of the most popular parts of the town.
It's a win-win for everyone because it gets people off the roads, which is a hazard to the driver and the person exercising. And then it also just creates a community place. And there's so many things we can do with that trail. I like how just simple it is, but we can host more events through it. There's a lot that we can build off of it, and it's right through the middle of town. So you can do your workout and then go get a pastry right on Main Street.
So now, does your wife approve of the devices you sell?
Yes, she does. So she is a little bit different of, so I'm in medical device sales. So my devices, they're for physical therapists and occupational therapists. They are for more complex cases. So people have had strokes, neurological conditions, spinal cord injuries, things of that nature. So for her practice, they would not make any sense for her because she's seeing outpatients, so people after surgeries or just maybe like a sprained ankle, things of that nature. So we don't have any conflict of interest. I don't sell anything to her. She can't buy anything from me, so it all works out pretty well.
I'd be more worried that she'd be, I'm not quite sure I like the way that.
Yeah, exactly. Also a little bit of motivation to not sell to her, because she would definitely finagle her way for extra warranty and drive that price down lower, because I can't really say no to her. So.
Yeah, well, that's the truth. I mean, you're 3 years, I'm approaching 100, so.
I have a few years to go then.
Yeah, you got a few years to catch up, but I was told many years ago that the first 50 years are the tough ones of marriage. After that, it's downhill all the way. So I figure, 40 in, pretty soon.
You're right there.
I'm almost at the top.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's a blessing to you guys. 40 years is amazing.
I haven't figured out how a woman so intelligent as my darling bride could put up with me for this many years.
That's my fear too, so.
Yeah, you sit there and say, you definitely married down, because I know I married way up. Now,
it's a long-standing tradition.
if somebody was to ask you, can my child get a good education in Milford?
100%.
Why?
Well, if you look at, so from a resource standpoint, we spend about $14,000 per student, which is actually right around the state average. So no different than Hopkinton or Wellesley, we're right around the state average. We have fantastic teachers. We pay them well. We don't have any teachers that have any stipulations onto their teaching. So in other words, there's no, it's not like we're hiring someone who's not qualified for the position completely until they get certified. That's incredible. I mean, that we put enough money into the budget that we can get teachers who are qualified for the job right out of the bat. That's not always the case. We have a fantastic community that I would like to see built upon more. We put a lot of money into the schools themselves. We just built a brand new school. We're going to build another one, which I have some fun ideas for the high school. We just approved $250,000 for new science classrooms. So we constantly are improving upon what we've built. We're not settling. But what it does come down to too is how much involved you want to be as a parent. So there is that give and take, but we give you all the framework to help your child succeed in the best way they can.
What impact do you think the immigrant community has on our schools?
Yeah, so like I said before, coming from a very diverse town, there's so many pros to it. You get, I've been introduced to so many different customs and traditions, foods, everything. So you learn a lot. But there is a financial impact too, and I absolutely, realize that. For us, we get most of our revenue, the town, from property taxes. So, and we, in my opinion, I think we have very low property taxes for what we get. Not everyone agrees, but I think we do a fantastic
with all
job.
due respect, any tax is too much.
Of course, right?
But when you
of
look,
course.
you're absolutely right. When you look at the average bill in Milford at $5,500,
Yeah.
you look at any of these other towns you're talking about,
lot
it's
more.
$7,000, $8,000.
Oh, my brothers live in towns that it's 4 times the amount. So I don't know. Yeah, it can get pretty out of hand fast. So we get a lot of resources for what we pay into. I understand there's a lot of extra costs to having additional programs like English as a second language programs that you not only have to teach them the language, but then also then reteach them how to learn. So there are some costs there. But and unfortunately, again, this is just not a school committee thing that we can solve because, that's really, a federal issue that we have to solve, the immigration status of things. But, we do need to fight for every penny that we can get. There are grants out there from the state, federal programs as well that we can get more money into the schools, and not just for immigrants, for all programs. And I know we have a grants director, and I've seen some of the work she's done. She does a great job. But that's something that as a school, yeah, go ahead.
Well, we've heard people get up and say one of the reasons we get so many immigrants is that we've put so much money into
Those programs.
Should we?
Yeah, I mean, so the law is pretty clear. We have to educate the students that are in our schools. And it doesn't say anything about.
Forget the law. This is Milford.
I like laws.
I hear you, but your gut.
Yeah.
Should we be putting this kind of money into helping Milford kids?
Yeah, I mean, we have no choice. If we don't invest in our kids, there's repercussions that are down the road. You just had an interview with the sheriff, and he said it himself. These problems start in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and if we spend $14,000 a year on students, we spend $55,000 a year on prisoners in the state. If we just shifted a little bit of that money back over to students, I mean, how much better could that education be? And granted, I know we can't take money away from prisons for obvious reasons, but the concept is if we can invest a bit more now, that prison population hopefully will decline, and we can actually put more money back into the schools.
One of the things, and I've said it publicly, I don't need Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
I don't need Capitol Hill in Washington
Sure.
to tell me how to raise Milford kids.
Yeah.
The town meeting has always taken pride
Sure.
in doing, I mean, we got to meet the law.
Right, of course.
We may think Milford's the center of the universe. I mean, 28,000 people know it's true. 6.5 billion or 7 billion have to be educated.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, I always can trust that left to their own devices, town meeting, all 200 odd people are going to do what's right for the town and the kids.
I agree.
And that's why I say I don't need the laws, because I've never seen Milford go below it.
Right.
But, there always is the question. We're very proud of our special needs programs.
Yeah.
But, again, we've been told by a number, some who ran for school committee, that the reason we get so many special needs kids in is we have such a good program.
Well, then I think that's something to be proud of, that we have something that's good that people envy. So, I mean, granted, yes, could we, in any situation, could you spend money differently? Absolutely. But we have to educate the most of the students the best way we can. So this is the way that we do it, and I think that's great.
And I think the day comes when I'm in front of the pearly gates. Hopefully I went north, not south. If I get on the ultimate bus and they hand me suntan lotion, I'm going to be worried about something else.
Yeah, that's true.
But if the worst thing somebody could ever say is you were too good to the kids,
Yeah.
I think I can live with that.
I think anyone could live with that. Yeah, to demonize kids for no fault of their own is unconscionable to me. I mean, you have to. our kids are our future. At some point, they're going to be taking care of us. And I want them to be smart.
Yes. What would you add as far as programs?
Yeah. So there's one thing that I think is creative and something that I would do if I'm elected or not. I want to set up, and we'll work on the name, but I think this might be an interesting name, the Soaring Fund. So the Soaring Fund would be dedicated to Milford athletics, where we set up a endowment fund to make sure that Milford Athletics has money that does not come from the taxpayers. So it's sustaining that fund from non-tax revenue. So what my goal is over the next 10 years to raise $1 million to put into that fund, and that will yield about $50,000 a year, just off the interest. And what that will do is ensure that it's paying for coaches' salaries, for uniforms, maintenance for fields, equipment, things of that nature. That's $50,000 a year that Milford will not have to come out of the tax base. So I think that's something that I would love to do. Another thing, when we talk about the high school that's going to be built at some point or another, we have to figure out, and not just the high school, but all of our properties. So something that was creative that was done in Danbury, my hometown, we started leasing out classroom space to a local community college that needed more classroom space. Why can't we do that here? Why can't we say to one of our community colleges, hey, listen, in order to get more students enrolled, instead of having them drive 40 minutes one way or the other, why don't we have a couple classes a night here in Milford? You pay us a small fee, the building's already there, you might as well use it, and now we can get a little extra revenue. With the high school, Ashland High School, when they built theirs, they put solar panels in their parking lots. Maybe we can, at minimum, keep our energy costs neutral, and if not, if we have, a big enough solar farm, maybe actually make some money off of our property that we use anyways. So there's some ways that we can bring in revenue without having to hurt our taxpayer tax base. So those are some of the ideas that I've thought of. Well,
you said you want to do some creative things at the high school.
Yeah.
Probably 7 more years.
Yeah.
8 years, we'll have the money tucked away to do something at the high school.
Sure.
Any ideas?
Well, pipe dream would actually be, and I'm biased here, I want to have a field house. I want to have an indoor track.
Not pipe dream.
Yeah, when we're talking about it, talking about usable space, we can rent out those spaces. We can actually make revenue off of the spaces that we have. If you look at some of the track meets in Boston, indoor track meets, they're making a few $1,000s just on a 4-hour time basis. So, and people want to drive all the way to Boston to do it. There'd be plenty of programs that would appreciate that.
That's one of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Because this always comes the question, why are we going to build a new high school?
Yep.
And I started laughing, saying, okay, now let's really think about this. Yeah. When we did Brookside, it's 300 kids.
Yep.
We had to build another half school by adding on to the others. Because in the year or so that it takes, or 2 to build it, you got to put the little cherub somewhere.
Somewhere.
Now, the high school's like 1,200.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
To build a new high school, run $250 million?
Something like that.
And you'd say, where could you put it? The only place we can think of is Asylum Street.
Right.
So you're as far away from everything as possible.
Which is not ideal.
And then you look at what the state's reimbursing.
Yep.
They won't pay for a pool.
Nope.
They won't pay for an auditorium. 2 of the most used pieces in the school.
Sure.
So there's a whole group of people who are advocating to renovate. I mean, first of all, Milford High is a bunker.
There's not a lot of windows.
No, but it's so sturdy, made out of that cement.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I'd love to see a new wing built and a field house.
Sure.
And the field house is just something I'd love to see for our kids.
Sure.
Because you go to places like Shrewsbury and other towns and, oh, the field houses are gorgeous.
It adds a ton of value to the community all the way around. I mean, it can be used, 365, 24/7 if we really wanted to. And I think we should actually look into hiring someone that would help fill those spaces all around town. We have to find the right person. We have to figure out some financials for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to renovating. My particular high school that I went to, we have now 4,000 students in it. There's been about
Wow.
7 additions to it. Most recently, they put on a $60 million or $50 million addition to add about 25 classrooms. It's a very big, expensive addition for only 25 classrooms. And it did add another gym and everything, but it's a huge problem. I mean, what can you do? I mean, building a whole new school is going to cost a lot of money. Adding on or and renovating is going to cost a lot of money too. So we have to really weigh what's going to be our best options long term, and figure out the most creative solutions that we can. But being someone who's young, I'm ready to stay up all night working on those solutions and hearing everyone's ideas and then trying to fight for whatever I think is best. So, with agreeance of the community, of course.
Do you see any programs in Milford that you don't think we need?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't know specifically what I would say to that. I never like to say something should be cut because it's really easy to look at a balance sheet and say, well, what are we spending this money for? I really would like to know what everything does and really evaluate, how many students are using this. We're spending that much money per student. Is there a way that we can maybe piggyback off of another town with that service that they offer? Or how can we better utilize our friends in the other communities? There are ways to do that. And we already kind of do that with our police and fire departments. If there's mutual aid calls, things of that nature, why don't we do that with our schools? Maybe there is a program at Milford High School that we could say, well, you know what, we spend a lot of money and there's not a lot of students who are interested, but Hopkinton has a great program for it. Maybe we can work with them to share some of that cost burden instead of having for us to bear all of this for not a lot of success from it. So I don't have anything specifically that I would recommend, but I'm open to looking at it, top to bottom and trying to find what's
Now,
next.
if you're successful,
Yeah.
your world
When I'm successful.
When you're successful, your world becomes one of 4.
Yeah.
7 members of the school committee.
Mm-hmm.
To get anything passed, you need to get 3 other people to join you.
Sure.
How do you approach 7 people, totally different backgrounds, ideas?
Sure.
How would you work with the other 6?
You have to find common ground somewhere. It's tough because you always hear about, well, if we do this for you, you'll do this for me, and things like that. There's a fine line where that absolutely needs to happen and work. There's other lines of, well, that's how you spend a lot of money in not efficient ways either. So what you have to do when you're trying to convince anyone, and being in sales, my whole day is convincing people. You have to figure out what their barriers are. What's holding them back? Is it because of an ideological issue? Is it because of the money? What is the barrier? And if we can address what the barrier is, we can figure out how to work together. And I can be stubborn, I know that, but you're stubborn for passionate things. And that's what makes politics good, is that you have a passion for it. And you should have a passion for it. You should believe in what you're trying to do. So you have to take down that guard a little bit. You have to have some fun with them outside of work, outside of your responsibilities. Let's get to know them as a person and know that, sometimes they're going to agree with you and sometimes they're not. And that's okay. And you can't take it personally when they don't. And when they do, you shake their hand and say, we did a good job today. And you move on.
So now how are you going to get to know the 8,000 homes in Milford?
Well, they have a lot of doors to knock on. I think there's some new creative ways to campaign, but I think the best way is to actually physically meet people. So my plan is to knock on a lot of doors, try to have some local meetings within houses, just groups 5, 10, 15 people, and just get people to know me. Again, I'm new to the town, so I have no problem if someone says to you, you have no idea what you're talking about, you've only been here for 2 years, I'm not going to vote for you. That's fine. But I believe I have enough of an idea of how education works that I can be effective no matter how much or little I know about a certain town. I'm more concerned about making sure our children have the best possible education that
Have
we
you
can
set
provide.
your bake sale up yet?
Not yet. And I do like baking. Believe it or not, I actually am the one that bakes, and that's only because of Julianne's work schedule. She's a fantastic baker. Christmas time, Christmas cookies are the best. I will have to give you some. I think there's other fun ways to raise the money too.
I remember when we first were together, my darling bride learned how to vulcanize.
What's so?
You know how they take rubber and make it into
Yes,
tires?
yes.
the vulcanization process, somehow she did it with cakes.
Interesting.
I've never tried to gnaw through a cake as tough. I kept telling her, I need it in 14-inch because then I can get 40,000 miles. And then I learned that she actually was a very good cook.
Yep.
But when we were first together, the going out to eat budget was mine.
Sure.
The staying home expenses were hers.
Yep.
So she thought it was much better to always go out.
Oh, of course, yeah, especially with that model. Yeah, I mean, but you know, people say it's hard to cook. It's not. You just have to learn how to read, which is kind of what I'm trying to do. And then if you could read, you can read a recipe book, and if you follow a recipe book, 9 times out of 10, you can do a decent job. You might not be perfect, but you're not going to screw it up too bad.
Have you learned about porchetta yet?
Porchetta, I know I've had it. Haven't personally made it. I'm not too
That's
adventurous.
going to be the question that you'll get asked on the campaign trail is, whose porchetta do you like best?
Oh man.
You know.
Well, what recommendations do you have? Who do you think's the best?
Oh my God, I can't not go against Carla and Gina at Oliva's.
I don't know. I mean,
You know,
that's,
I mean,
yeah.
they've taken care of my kids' graduations, birthdays, you name it. They've always
It's a great
done
little,
it. And,
great little store.
and then you've got the same tradition that she's taking care of the Milford High Cafeteria.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know
So,
that.
you know, when you
Yeah.
go, I never, ever worry about the quality of food because nothing is going to be served that's not to the Oliva standards.
See, that's perfect.
You know, and it's always amazing when people say you can't have good food. It's like you haven't met Carla or Gina.
See, this is what's great about this town. You know, I mean,
But the
it's all
porchetta,
right. First thing I'll do.
You got to try the Oliva's porchetta.
Done.
I mean, just unbelievable.
Done.
How do I put this? I'll give you either a softball or a hard-to-hit ball. Your opinion on the advantages of somebody brand new coming in
Yeah.
versus somebody who's been on the school committee forever.
I mean, experience is so valuable. So I have people who've been in the town for a long time. People who've been on the school committee for a long time. Experience is valuable. You know who to talk to. You know the relationships. I didn't know that Oliva's was running our meal department in the schools. There's so much to that. At the same time, there's a lot of complacency in that. And it's to no one's fault. I mean, if you've been around long enough, it's kind of the ways how things go. And you need people who are going to bring fresh ideas to the situation. I think being an outsider does give me some advantages to looking at things more objectively. I haven't heard all these arguments for years and years and years about what's good and what's bad. I can
But
actually.
we always did it this way.
I know, but and I appreciate that, and I'm kind of the same way in some respects. But again, the world changes at a daily pace at this point. We're trying to teach our students that you have to adapt to change. Well, as adults, we need to show them how to do that too. So I feel like bringing some new ideas are helpful to any situation. But I certainly respect the people that have been around for a long time too. Their opinion values just as much as mine. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a voter, and we all have the same say in this situation.
We're at the point where I'm going to ask my last question.
Okay.
Brenda, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I think over the past almost hour now, you've gotten a pretty good experience as to who I am and what I can do. And I think what it comes down to is I'm going to fight tooth and nail for every single thing that our students need. I'm objective to the process where I've taught at a collegiate level and I know what it takes to get to that level. And not everyone has to go to college either, but I understand the value of education. No matter what your career is going to be, you need to have some base of an education. And I believe that every single child should have it, and I want to be part of that change. I want to be part of that process that produces hundreds of kids every single year that are ready to take on the world and make Milford proud.
I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
More importantly than anything, thank you for stepping up. Because too many people will tell you what should be done, how it should be done, but not enough get up and say, I'm willing to help and
Sure.
try.
Yeah.
So
I
my
appreciate
hand
it.
goes out to you.
Thank you.
And regardless of the election,
Yeah, I'm going to be involved no matter what. Yeah.
there are so many programs that Milford has for people, you know, who want to be involved, who want to make a difference, that I love, especially somebody that's coming in fresh. Because people like me, I was born here.
Sure.
I didn't choose to come to Milford.
Right.
I chose to come back, but I was already rooted here. You know, somebody like you and Giuliano who made a conscious decision to call Milford home means so much more. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, we appreciate that you're taking the time to get to know the candidates. You know, it's hard to find time to watch YouTube or watch Milford TV, to take the time, not fall asleep during the show, but it's critical that you make up your mind and you decide who best will carry your values forward. So, again, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you. And don't forget, get out and vote.
Not too long since I've been home.